Greetings friends, this is Hamilcar with Hamilcar Gaming, and I'm here with the first of an installment in my How to Be a Better Player. Now, this first video is going to be focused on character development and character creation. And so when it comes to character development and character creation, I usually try to push my players and myself to really ask and define about 6 different topics or questions. And so I'm going to go through 6 different videos that are going to describe those, but this is the first one of those. And to start off the character creation process, the first that I would say is that you have to come up with an idea. You have to have an inspiration for your character and really a general description. And this is a really interesting topic because I have found that I have my own method that I enjoy, but I've talked to a lot of other established role players, and most of them actually come up with a lot of different ways. And during some of my research and looking at novel writing and looking at how characters are developed for those types of stories, I've realized that there's actually a lot of cross-correlation here. And so I'm going to discuss a couple of different methods that I've seen or heard from different players that they've used, and maybe sell my method a little bit because it works for me. But with that, I'll go ahead and go through the main methods that I have identified and seen for coming up with an idea for a character. So first I'll go ahead and talk about what I usually do. And that is, I start with actually the way I expect to roleplay them, or what I would call their personality. Now, I'll have another video that talks specifically on defining a personality for your character. But for me, I think that when you develop a character, it's often beneficial to start with whatever you think is going to be a pinnacle for you role-playing them properly. Some people focus on, I don't think I can role-play my character without knowing where they came from, knowing their background, origin, things like that. But for me, I really want to focus on the personality of the character. And so historically, I've had characters that have had different personalities. And when it comes to personality, my main idea is that I will use an aspect of my personality and take that as the forefront of the character. And what that does for me is it makes it unique. I'm not being myself. I'm not just playing Hamilcar as whatever name, but instead it will create something unique for that character, but it's something I'm still able to roleplay because it's still a part of me. I have a wizard character I've played in the past that really focused more on some of the science and engineering background that I have, more contemplative. I had a cleric character that focused more on some of my philosophy, thoughts, and arguments about kind of the grays in this world, and really how you define what's right and wrong in morality. But then on more of a fun side of things, I have a gnome illusionist who is kind of a prankster and trickster, and it goes along with a bit of my mischievous attitude that I'll have with friends and family, and joking and humor and things like that. And then one of my most recent characters, known as Captain Carlos, was kind of a very charismatic, extroverted showboater who was really focused on kind of being a bit of the center of attention. And what it did for me is that each one of these characters felt unique from who I am, because I'm kind of a blend of these things, but I felt like I was able to play them well. And so I use that as my cornerstone for choosing my character. And then the rest of the pieces kind of came together. If I'm going to play some eccentric showboating character, that character ended up being a swashbuckling pirate. And to me, a lot of the choices I made and the other pieces that I'll go through in this series on character creation all rooted from how I wanted to play my character. Now, of course, that's just my method. There are lots of other methods. Another method that's very popular is actually to what I call an archetype view, or a theme. And what that is that people will sometimes say, I like to play druids. I want to play a druid. And they'll say, okay, if I were to play a druid, and maybe it were to have this race, or I was a druid that was maybe a stormcaster, or some sort of specific build that they were looking for, that really that's what they wanted to accomplish, and then they'll build the rest of the character and the rest of the design off of that pinnacle, that they kind of have an idea for, I want to play this, and then they build all the building blocks. I never liked that much for me, and the reason for that is that I felt like sometimes I would fall into a trap where I'd make the character and I had a really hard time making them feel unique or deep, because in my mind the character ended up being very trope-esque, where I would end up playing it just like you would expect. You know, if I were to play a barbarian, it was, barbarian, I can't read, smash things. And I realized that that wasn't as much fun for me as trying to come up with a unique personality and then building on it. But I know it's worked for a lot of people, and it's a good starting point, especially if you're doing research or trying to do role-playing for the first time. Another method that I know some players use, and I like to call this the pinnacle scene method, or you could even call it the TV action method. And the idea is that there's some vision they have for their character doing something or some action they wanted to see. One example, I have a friend who had made a character who what she wanted was to see a character laughing maniacally while shooting lightning. And so the things that built from that is the character and the mechanic that as this character's strength or ability with her electric power changed, it would also alter her personality, and that kind of gave a bipolar effect to things. But that what really happened is that the focus originally was on this scene, this action they wanted to see, and then the rest of the character built on what are the logical pieces I need to put together to make that happen. I want to see my character doing these exciting things or doing these humorous things or whatever it is, and then filling in the building blocks after that to make that come true. It's almost like having this vision of action that comes together. A fourth method that I know a lot of authors have professed using for figuring out NPCs or even figuring characters is sometimes you want to have a character to fill a traditional role, maybe like a mentor or the inexperienced adventurer or things like that. And what they'll actually do is they'll take a lot of examples that they really enjoy in media or movies, books, things like that. But what they'll do is they'll take a bunch of different ones that they like, and they'll take the aspects they like from them and combine them to make something new. And although copying those specific movie, TV, or book characters might not be original, when you take all these different pieces and then try to bring it together and try to make a logical cohesion, you do create something original. And it can actually be really helpful because sometimes you can kind of work off of the building blocks that others have established. So I hope this helps a little bit in some ideas of how to come up with a character. In reality, I found that sometimes you just got to get your feet wet. You pick something, you start moving forward, and the rest of the pieces in this series will go into how to really round out and add some depth to that character. And sometimes you may start with something that at the surface you might feel is a little shallow, but as you go through the other activities, it'll evolve and change. And I think sometimes people will get a little scared to even start making a character because they're like, oh, I can't come up with any good ideas. Well, sometimes it's worth it to just take the dive into the deep end, pick something. I would suggest that kind of an archetype or theme is one of the easier or simpler ones to start with, and then you can adjust and change through time. Well, I hope you enjoy this. If you have any thoughts, go ahead and leave them in the comments. Thank you for your time.